Hey everybody, welcome. Today we are going to be interviewing Todd Butzer, and Todd is a special friend of mine. He's been my mentor, leader. We're coming up on 10 years now that him and I have known each other in the KW world. He's a regional director. He's a family guy. He's very, very intelligent. One of the best leaders I've ever had the privilege of serving with. So I'm super excited for you guys to learn from him. What you guys can take away from today's recording is quite simply, what are the steps in one of the dimensions of wealth, one of the dimensions of a well-rounded life of financially. He's going to start talking about steps to set you guys up financially for a stronger future. So let's get started and have a listen to what he has to say. All right, Todd, thanks so much for being on. What I'm hoping people watching this today can walk away is some of your wisdom in and around their finances and their money. The people watching these are real estate professionals, which you've been around your entire life, probably starting with your dad. And let's get into it, and let's introduce you to the people watching this. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so thank you. By the way, it's my pleasure to be here with you, Caleb, and I'm so excited to do this with you. So first of all, I'm a Minnesota kid, born and raised here in southern Minnesota, a little town called Mankato, which most of you probably know. And my dad had a small business in town for years. And then when I got out of school and I went into broadcasting school, married my high school sweetheart, still married today after 42 years. And so I got into broadcasting right away. And while I was doing that, my dad had sold his company and got a little bit of money, not a lot. And he he got into real estate, got into selling commercial real estate for a regular traditional real estate company down in Mankato. And then I think really what happened to my dad is what happens to a lot of people is he started saying, you know, this is a small firm that I'm working for. I'm kind of driving this. I'm going to open my own. So he opened his own and he called it Butzer Realty. And I was doing broadcast. I was doing sports television down in Mason City, Iowa. And I realized that in order to progress in that field, Caleb, and I know this is very important to you too, but I would have to move my family about every 2 years in order to keep progressing. And I wasn't willing to do that. I also didn't like being gone every evening, you know, that kind of thing, because you come home at 11 o'clock at night and it just, I didn't like the schedule personally, and I didn't like the thing. So I thought, you know, I'm going to go back to Minnesota. I'm going to sell real estate with my dad. That's what I did. So I joined my dad in 1982 when interest rates is similar to what Gary talks about. Interest rates were off the charts. You know, we did anything we could to sell homes. Mostly was owner financing. And that's how I got started. In the late 80s, I started teaching for a large licensing school in the Twin Cities called ProSource at the time, which was doing 3,000 hours of live education a month. They were a huge, huge, huge school. The beauty of that for me was I quickly became kind of I was probably 28 years old, 27, 28. I became in charge of their instructors, and pretty much your experience when you went there was my deal. So what that allowed me to do, Caleb, was teach so many different subjects that I'm not saying I knew anything about them, but in order to teach them, you had to prep it, right? So I learned things about appraising. I learned things about, and I mean in-depth things. I learned things about financial calculators and discounted cash flow analysis and business and money. And, you know, I learned a lot during those days because we would teach 1,000 hours a year. So, you know, you're in the classroom a lot. And while I was doing that, I started branching out, speaking around the country a little bit. I bought a marketing firm, which will come up later. And kind of one thing led to another. And I got involved with Keller Williams in end of 2002 as a consultant, and then came on full-time down in Austin on the executive team in 2003 as the VP of marketing and training. And then it led kind of to regional ownership. And so today I am a regional partner in both the North Central region and the Gulf States region. So that's kind of a quick, fast fast synopsis. I'm married. I've got 3 children. I've got 5 grandchildren, and they all live close. So
cool. Thank you so much. Yeah. Yeah. And that's actually how you and I know each other. Was you were the regional director for the North Central region. I had submitted a web inquiry going, hey, I'm going to start my own brokerage and I'm thinking about Keller Williams. And right off the bat, you started holding me accountable, asking me questions that as a 23, 24-year-old kid, I was not prepared to answer, but yet it was crucial to my development. So that's how you and I know each other. For those of us
I still recall that meeting very, very well. That first conversation, absolutely. It's a sweet spot in my heart for sure. So
yeah, thank you. I'll brag on you for 1 minute because you're very, very humble. You hands down to this day are one of the best leaders I've ever had the privilege of working with. So I want to say thank you for that.
My pleasure. Thank you for those kind words coming from you. That means a lot. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Given your background, you're a regional partner now in two regions inside of Keller Williams. You obviously, that doesn't just happen by chance. You have to work pretty hard. You have to prove yourself through instructing and teaching. You have to handle money really, really well. So talk to me about kind of your relationship with money and how it came to be to where you became this partner in 2 regions.
So it's a good question. So, I'd love to say that, man, I had it nailed from the beginning. I was so good at money, and I really wasn't. I was careless, to be honest with you. And that's why after I met you, by the way, I had so much respect for you because of at a young age, you had a deep respect for capital. Okay. And I didn't share that. When I first got married, I believed that I could always just make more, so I was messy. Now, the good news for me is it taught me, and I learned from it and then moved beyond it. And I had a lot of great influencers in my life. My father was a great influencer in that regard because he never owed anybody anything from a very young age. And so, I had business influencers that were really tremendously gifted at running businesses in a really strong, fiscally responsible way. I mentioned my teaching days. The 2 gentlemen who owned it were not that much older than I was, and they were running a multi-million-dollar business, very lean, very strong, cash rich, could pay their bills. They were just a strong influence. So I got to be around a lot of that. And then I bought a marketing firm, which was a mistake. But a lot of times your mistakes show up, Caleb, as a catalyst to other things in your life, And when divine intervention happens and you start learning from those mistakes, it makes you just stronger and better. So the marketing firm, I bought without due diligence. I bought it because I knew the guy who ran it, and I really didn't look into it very carefully. And it cost a lot of money, but it also made me a lot because the experiences that I had at the marketing firm led me to KW. All right. So you ask how I got involved in 2 regions. This is how it happened when, and I'll be brief here as quickly as I can. So the North Central region, which is the region you're in, Montana, Wyoming, straight across through Wisconsin, had, I think, 4 partners that owned it. Okay. And these operate like a market center operates. They, people own them and as an investment. They were looking for a new regional director, and they came searching for me. I was in Austin, actually, working with KW. I was going back and forth. And they were at a meeting in Austin, and the guys who own the region came and found me in my office about 7 o'clock one night and said, "Are you Todd Butzer?" I said, "Yeah." And they said, "From the Twin Cities?" I said, "Yeah." They said, "Well, we own the North Central region, and we'd like you to help us be the regional, find a regional director." I said, "I can do that." And they said, "Actually, we were hoping you would do it." I said, "No, I'm not going to do it." I said, I'm not going to do it. I said no. And because I was so new with KW at the time, Caleb, that I didn't see that as something that I would continue with. Mark Willis kind of intervened, the former CEO of the company intervened, and he said, look, you can have Butzer, but he would have to be your COO, or being your regional operating partner, and he's going to need stock. And so we worked out a deal where some of the stock was gifted right out of the chute, which was, Mark made me a lot of money just with that statement, to be honest with you. And I say that with admiration, and not arrogance, I hope.
No.
But he made me a lot of money with just that statement. And then I earned a group in, and then I bought some more. So, and I became a controlling principal in the North Central region. And because I was the ROP, which is, your role in your market centers is OP. I'm that role in the region at the time. I hired a regional director, fired him after about 9 months, and then I was talking with a colleague of mine, a mentor of mine. He said, you own that region. You should run it for yourself. So I went and talked to Gary, and I said, here's what I'm thinking. He said, I would do that. So I became the RD, and we named one of my other partners the ROP. So that was North Central. The Gulf States was a little different in how that happened, Caleb, real quickly, is that, to be honest with you, I taught Quantum Leap down there. If you haven't experienced that class, everyone, get to it at some point in your life. But I taught Quantum Leap in the Gulf, but the interesting timing was, I think it was within about 9 months of Katrina. And I had no idea, Caleb, the emotional scars and the impact that storm had, by the way, still has. It's still sitting right on people's shoulder when you meet somebody from the Gulf. It's just Katrina, the storm is right there. And Quantum Leap is an emotional class, as you know, and it just connected me to it. So the owner, the main controlling owner of that region, came to me about a year later. I was doing another class for them, I think, and she had lunch with me, and she said, I'd like you to be the regional operating partner of our region. And I said, no.
There's a pattern here.
This is the guy that's giving you financial advice today. Yeah, I said no. I said no to her. And her and I talk about this all the time. Her name is Debbie Alexander, a good friend of mine. I was on my way to my office here in the Twin Cities, and I was driving. I know right where I was. I was driving by the airport, and I had this massive, God nudge that said, "You better call her." So I called her back. I said, "Debbie, we should do this," and that became this catalyst to me owning the controlling interest in the Gulf States region, which has been a remarkable experience for me. So that's how I got involved in two. Those regions really don't sell like that anymore. So I was extremely fortunate, beyond blessed to get involved like that. So
sure.
That one I acquired, I didn't, there was not an earn in or anything like that. I purchased that.
Okay. All right. So you had said something I want to dig a little bit deeper on, is that you had this mindset prior to maybe some of your business mentors that you got in business with or started asking questions to. You said, I always felt I could just make more. And I think that's a common theme with a lot of our top producers, where they fall into this trap of they're not netting any money, or they're not bringing home enough money. And I think that's something that a lot of our top people tell themselves. But could you dig a little bit deeper on that and just tell us your experience maybe with that comment, or what changed? What habits did you?
What happened, first of all, it is prevalent throughout our industry. Part of the challenge is, in my mind, is that, let's say an agent is doing, pick a number, 100,000 in GCI, or 50,000, or 300,000, or $1 million, or $2 million. The agents that I've met with frequently that are in these larger numbers, Caleb, believe that, let's say you have an agent doing $1 million in GCI, okay? Well, $1 million in GCI is really, it's superb. It's great production, but it's not $1 million in income. And so I think for a lot of them, they start believing, not through arrogance or snootiness or anything, but they believe that they are making $1 million. and they're not. They're making, 250,000 or whatever. And that's good income too, but it's not a million. So their lifestyle starts to creep toward this expanded lifestyle where they're heavily leveraged. They have massive expense flow going out. Their cash flow is extremely tight because it's hard to manage it. And so they become living on this edge, right? Now, for me, what happened was when I owned the marketing firm, we were not strong in terms of running that operation. We weren't good at it. We didn't know what we were doing, myself and my partner. Good guy, by the way, but we didn't know what we were doing. So to be frank with you, what happened is I had, if you think about it, I had been working with guys who really knew what they were doing with money. And during that part of my life, I had kind of settled down and we weren't doing like crazy things. Then I get into the marketing firm. That's not operating fiscally responsibly. So now we're on the edge, and now you're having trouble meeting payroll, and there's war stories along with that. And to be frank with you, I had been with, with my father and with these guys and my father-in-law, people that managed money well, and that was my path. I was not going to be on this edge of taking a call from a bill collector. I just was not going to do that. And by the way, we never had any kind of catastrophic kind of an event where you have to file for bankruptcy or anything like that. But they were tough financial times due to a disrespect for capital, which is a line right from Gary Keller, right? Then when I got involved with Keller Williams, his way of running an operation, and you and I've shared some stories before about that, Caleb, is so precise that I've had now almost 20 years with him, 18 years with him, that is, you couldn't buy that with an MBA anywhere. So, but there was a switch in me during the days when things were tight, where I said, I'm not going to live like that. We're going to be responsible and get a handle on this. Dave Ramsey-ish, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Where I don't want that kind of stress. And what happens is we've been married a long time. Your marriage can be going along, but when there's a money thing, I'm just promising everybody watching today, if there's money challenges, number one, you can get over it. Number two, it's causing more stress in your life than you believe or than you know, right? So I don't know if that was a long answer, but it was the catalyst was I experienced the other side of that, the dark side of the moon, so to speak. I was not going to be involved in that. I had a lot of mentors that were good. So
you had this belief or this alignment with how money should be run. Mm-hmm. Your first real exposure to it was the marketing firm, and you felt as though it was outside of that alignment, maybe living on redlining or on the edge, it's violating some of these core principles that I've seen really smart people in my life, making decisions, and it's living outside of maybe that channel, let's say. What are one or two things that you started to do like immediately? Like, okay, so you started to feel this creep, you started to feel like you're getting towards the edge. Did you immediately start backing away from the company? Did you feel that there were some things you had to do there? What would be like the way we could correlate it to an agent or a top producer that all of a sudden goes from 500,000 GCI to $1 million, and they start creeping up their lifestyle and living at that edge, but realizing that might be outside of where they should be?
Right. So, there was a great description from a guy at a conference one time, and he said, if the universe is providing, if God is providing this kind of level of income for you, but you're spending at this, you're spending beyond your life. You don't have that kind of money, right? So the first thing to do, Gary wrote in Shift, you got to get real, get right. The first thing I did, Caleb, really is I came to the end of the relationship with my business partner and said, we're not good at this. So we're gonna divorce. And that shocked him. He didn't like that, not because I was any big, brilliant guy, but I just wasn't going to continue that. And that was the first step. Then we split the company in two. Then I sold my portion of the company to a firm that I knew. And that was kind of the recalibration time, if you will. The other thing we did, to be honest with you, I'm just being very open, is we gave my wife, Jody, who's really good with money, we gave her control over all the personal books. You know, I said, honey, you take all of this. And during that time, I'll tell you this, we always tried to be generous during that time. You know, we tried to always be giving during all of that. But that was kind of the catalyst, I think, because that's the moment when we said, okay, we're going to get a handle on this right now. Now, just to fast forward, I live in the same house we bought in 1988. It's 2,300 square foot. I'm in that house right now. It's a 2,300 square foot end of a cul-de-sac. We bought it for $135. It might be worth $350 today. Okay, so I mean, we've been in that house now since '88, Halloween night of '88. We have a place in northern Wisconsin too, but we purposely live far below. And by the way, still enjoy a really, really nice life, but we live below that edge. I really encourage all of you. See, people hear Gary and Caleb talk about a big life. They do. But they didn't hear him say at Mega Camp a couple of years ago, do you live in a modest home that you can well afford? Or are you living in an expansive mansion that you're right on the edge with?
Yeah, their lifestyle is out overshooting their income, or potentially a couple bad years or something bad happens and they're upside down.
You're right on the edge, and you just, folks, what did Ramsey say? He said, I want to live like no one else so that I can live like no one else, right? Or something like that. In other words, I'm going to do things now that in the future are going to pay off so big that, because after that, the money stream, you can't really slow that down. You know, anyway.
Yeah. All right. So I just want to summarize what I believed I heard you say, that as soon as you started feeling like you were living outside, or the business was living outside of what you knew naturally was a poor relationship with money or capital inside of that business, you got real and you got right immediately. You figured out what was going on. And then I also heard you say that you took action right away. So you said, okay, once I actually got real, told myself the truth about the situation, what's going on, understood what was going on, you took action, you sold your shares. And then you did something I thought was really, really interesting that I've been able to do a couple times in my life, is you gave control of something, which in this circumstance was the books, and you gave it to somebody who's really, really good at it. You parked your ego aside, and you said, I'm going to give it to Jody, and Jody's going to run the books, who makes very logical decisions, I'm assuming, with money. And you did that. The other key thing that I want to point out to people listening that you did that I think a lot of people don't hear enough is that you were generous through the whole process, or through your whole journey. You've always had this attempt to be very, very generous. And I think that's a part that does not get enough of a light shined on it for really successful people like yourself, or people that handle money really well, is most of the time they're very, very generous people. It's like crucial. It's a key. And then you kind of fast forwarded a little bit and said you've lived in the same house since '88. You've lived well below your means. And that is a trap that I think a lot of our agents and real estate professionals could fall into, is you start getting $1 million in GCI when you know that that's not necessarily their take home, and then they buy the $1 million home, or they buy a vehicle that they can't afford, and things like that.
You're exactly right. I was coaching with an agent, this is years ago, and it was right before the 05, 06 crash, Caleb. And I remember where we were. We were in a little cafe, and he was talking about a home he was going to build in an area. And because I was doing some coaching with him, I said, so what kind of price tag are you talking about? And I'm thinking, $400 or $500. He said, in fact, I think I said that to him. I said, so what, $400 or $500 grand? He said, no, $900. I said, okay, well, Bill, not his name. I said, you realize that everything in your life has to run on the rail. It's got to be perfect for that to work. By the way, this was right before the crash. So had he done, and he didn't do it, by the way, not because of me, but he chose not to kind of make that step. So there was a guy I knew in Colorado that was a really good businessman. And he used to say, I like toys. I like things. I like fast cars and things, but they're not a toy if you can't buy it.
Can
And
you dig a little deeper? What does that mean? What did you take away from that?
you got to do machinations to acquire, if you have resources and you are generous and you enjoy, I don't know, you enjoy, flying airplanes and you want to get a new airplane, you can, okay, that's great. Or you like driving really fun cars because it's a hobby, you're great. Or you like great instruments, musical instruments, whatever it is, I don't care. If you're borrowing money to do it, again, you want to think through that. Owing people money is a it's again, it's tougher than people think on you, because you're now beholden to somebody else, and when you get money in, you're sending it back out. I'm not saying, a lot of people have mortgages, whatever, and you're investing in a home and real property, things like that. I'm talking about when you're borrowing money to go on a vacation, which I've done when I was a young man. When you're borrowing money to buy furniture, I think Ramsey said this, Caleb. I think he said debt is the most marketed product in America today.
A lot of people make a lot of money off of money.
Right.
A lot of banks make a lot of money off of money. And,
yeah. And
bankers sit around and they high five each other when they've lent out more money, than they ever have the month before. I mean, that's their business. That's what they do. All the advertising wants people to stay in debt.
That's what it is. And the freedom you will enjoy when you get a handle on this. And by the way, here's what I've experienced a lot too, Caleb, is people beat themselves up. Well, I'm not good at this. I shouldn't ever have done that, or I made a mistake. Great. Wash that away and take control of where you are. And the people that I know that are the most comfortable, the best with money. Caleb, you were an example. When you came to meet me, you were driving an old beat up car, and you might probably have that car still today, knowing you. I don't know. Here's what I realized at a young age when I was on the edge. I'd buy a car that I couldn't afford or whatever. And here's the truth, folks. No one cares. No one gives a rip. No one looks and goes, oh, look at that car they drive. No one cares, because everybody's got their families and their own personal lives to be thinking about. So, so you asked about, what agents that get on the edge like that. The edge is costly. Poor financials are costly. It affects your ability to take on an investor. It affects your ability to expand. It affects your ability to invest. If you had played those kind of games, Caleb, at a young man's age and acquired a lot of debt, you would have never been able to do the market center involvement that you've been able to do at a very young age. Correct?
100%. That was the part I wanted to ask you. So after the marketing firm, you just said it's hard to invest if you're not having your finances in control. After you've been giving generously, Jody took over the books, you've been living below your means, you investing into a region. I mean, tell me what that would have been like if you continued to live redlined or on the edge.
Yeah, I don't think I would have been. I don't think I would have been hired by KW, because they had to look into me, back then. And I wasn't. I'm not going to say back in 2002 I was completely clean yet. I mean, I was clean in terms of what we were doing, but we were still paying back some of that stuff back in those days. So, but you're right. If here's another quick thing about that. If you're messy financially, and Caleb, you and I have talked about this, I think if you go list a house, let's say it's a nice house, a $500,000 house, whatever, I don't care, whatever the price tag is. It could be a $200,000 house. I think the owners can feel that you've got financial struggles. I think there's a vibe that comes off. And so I got really what was happening was we had, given the books to Jody. I went out and found money, meaning I started raising my own income. I had sold the firm. I started speaking a lot around the country. I started consulting at a very, at the time was a high rate. It was $500 an hour, minimum of 2 hours. So, and that was back in, 2000, so it was, so I immediately said, I gotta get money coming in, and I gotta reduce what's going out, and we're going to own stuff, not borrow, all that kind of thing. So
That's super interesting. So you're living below your means. So you cut your expenses first after the marketing company, but then you went out and said, okay, now I need to increase my inflow. You did that in an earned income environment where you went out and exchanged your time for money with teaching, which was very high, $500 an hour. You earned more income. And then what I'm assuming you did after the next step, and the agents can correlate that too, to just selling more houses, earning more income that way. Then what you started to do, I'm assuming, is you save some of it, and then that's what led to making the investments in the region.
Right, because when you're doing those investments, they don't want to wait for the money. You have to write checks, and if you can't write checks, they're not really interested in you, right? So what you do is because you're living below the means, you're now starting to accumulate some, and it accumulates quicker than you think, by the way. You're not out buying big things. You've reduced your outflow, and you've increased the kind of the earned income side. That allows you then to move, like, we've talked before about the cash flow quadrant. It allows you to start moving toward, I'm going to let my money start to work for me. I think too many in our industry are always on that last deal. To be frank with you, it's why I never went real big time into the speaking tour thing, because I knew guys in those days were making a lot of money, but Caleb, if they didn't get on the airplane, they couldn't make any more money, right? They had to be on the airplane.
Yeah.
They had to sell one more house.
Yeah, they couldn't disconnect their time from their income.
But
yeah,
they were literally on a wheel where,
yeah.
If I'm going to continue, and I'm going to continue with this kind of revenue, I've got to, quote, sell another house, instead of I'm going to let that investment property pay me, or this business pay me, or I'm going to own my operation free and clear, and I'm going to get it to the 7th level and let that thing operate. I'm going to explore, ancillary services, or I'm going to explore investing in real property, or investing in other types of businesses, or I'm going to get very accomplished at equity investing. I'm going to learn the market, or I get a good partner in equity investing and understand putting money into equities and getting good at that. But it's more than just, let me go here for a quick second, Caleb. I think people confuse income with wealth. There's a big difference. And I think a lot of you know that, but there's a big difference. I mean,
let's dig a little bit deeper into that. Income is not wealth. Income is, because I think what you're saying, did you say your sister or sister-in-law?
Sister, yeah.
So your sister, you're saying is actually very wealthy, but her family might not have always had that really high income. Like they didn't have that,
Yep.
They didn't have that job that paid $250,000 a year. They had, just regular income, but she's wealthy.
Yeah. Yeah. So the point being there is you and I could name dozens, if not hundreds, of people that are in the limelight: athletes, musicians, actors and actresses that are bankrupt. Yet the income was high. Well, people look at like a guy like David Letterman, and they go, well, David Letterman made a lot of money in his job. He did, but his wealth came from Worldwide Pants Productions, which he owned, which owned Everybody Loves Raymond, which that alone is enough with syndication, but on and on and on and on and on. He owns multiple, production of sitcoms and all kinds of things through Worldwide Pants that he owned. So it's income is it's cash flow, but it's not investing. It's just income. Now, by the way, if you don't have enough income, you gotta get that. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, if you went and made more, you had to go work for $500 an hour speaking and teaching. You raised up the income then, so that you could make those investments. But none of those investments would have happened I'm very sure, unless you had cash saved up. So you increased your income, you saved it, and then you looked for the best opportunity that got put in front of you to invest in whatever. And at the time, it was the region. So, but that's the same thing our agents can take away is going, okay, you go out and you sell an extra house, but are you saving it to make an investment in that asset? Because we're in a business that rewards the income.
Right.
Not the wealth.
No, that's exactly right. So, and again, with an agent, they get a $12,000 commission check, and they invariably they treat it as if that 12 is theirs. But see, that 12 isn't theirs. The 12 is the company's, not the real estate office. It's Todd Butzer Inc.'s money. Todd Butzer. And so from Todd Butzer Inc., there's flow to that. There's tax, there's expense and so on. And then there's the net that comes to me. That's my income, not the gross. And so one of the early things you have to do is get really real about how much money is coming in. Because if we ask an agent how much they're making, they'll say, I'm making $250 a year. That's usually, they're usually quoting, and I love them, obviously, but they're usually quoting the gross numbers, not the net.
Right. Absolutely. Well, Todd, you've been super generous with your time. I appreciate you as always. Any parting thoughts or last minute things that you think would be great little nuggets for any of these real estate professionals as they're going about in their careers?
I think that, first of all, thanks for inviting me to do this. It's been a lot of fun. Always great to see you. I don't have everything figured out, but I do like, I like being what Gary calls an immovable object, right? You're for your family, you're just you become a rock where things are taken care of. And I've been on both sides of this, messy and clean is much, much, much better. Here's the thing. You can get started today, right now, by writing down every obligation you have. Stop adding more obligations. Sell more. Get the income up, because a lot of us, here's what I always ask people, Caleb, could the market provide you with more? And trust me, the market could provide you with more. Ben Kinney could drop into Green Bay, Appleton, or any other market, Hudson, Oakland, anywhere, and he could drop into that market and he'd start making money right now. So the market can provide you more. So raise that, stop spending, avoid any kind of a long-term debt on a product that's not rising in value, right? Just be ferocious on this, because it's worth it. For those of you that are Bible scholars, you know that Christ talked more about money than he did love, I think.
Your relationship with money is incredibly, it speaks deeply about your faith, actually, I believe.
I agree. And it's so freeing, folks, and you can do it right up. You can start working on it right now. And I guess the parting thought would be, have respect for capital. It's hard to earn. It takes a lot of work. And the more messy you are, the more expensive it is for you and your family. So you can get out of this, and you can, those of you that are already good at it, God bless you, because you're going to provide a great thing for your family. Those
of you who are good at it, go help other people with it. Right. Todd, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you as always. Best to you and your family, and thanks again.
My pleasure. Good to see you as always. Thanks, Caleb. Thanks, everybody.